They had beaten the Luftwaffe. They had buried the Wehrmacht in snow and blood. So in 1976, no one in that room believed an airplane could frighten them. The briefing hall at Severomorsk 3 airfield, carved into rock above the Kola Peninsula, smelled of stale tobacco, hydraulic fluid, and boiled metal. It was the smell of victory, Soviet victory, inherited from fathers who fought at Kursk and Stalingrad. Colonel Viktor Malenkov stood beneath a flickering fluorescent lamp, boots planted wide, knuckles white around a wooden pointer. In front of him sat 18 interceptor pilots of the 174th Guards Regiment, men selected not for charm or optimism, but for nerve. Outside, the wind screamed across the Arctic runway. Parked in silence were the machines they trusted more than words. MiG-25 Foxbats, massive, angular, unapologetically brutal. Aircraft built for one purpose only, to kill intruders before they ever understood they were dying. These men were not young. They had flown against NATO for a decade. They had chased phantoms across radar scopes and forced American pilots to turn away without ever firing a shot. They were calm, bored even. Malenkov tapped the corkboard. Pinned to it was a grainy, high-altitude photograph, a black needle against the sky. SR-71. He let the silence stretch. American Strategic Reconnaissance Platform, call sign Blackbird. Someone snorted from the back row. Service ceiling? A pilot asked, already smiling. Approximately 75,000 feet, Malenkov replied. That was enough. Laughter rolled through the room. Not loud, not disrespectful, but confident. The sound of men who believed the equation was already solved. Captain Alexei Voronin, a veteran with a scar cutting through his eyebrow, leaned back in his chair. Our S-200 batteries can reach 130,000 feet, he said casually. Twice that altitude. Heads nodded. Another pilot added, and our Foxbats hold Mach 2.8 without complaint. Someone else muttered, if it stays long enough to be seen. This was not arrogance. This was doctrine. The Soviet air defense network was a cathedral of steel and mathematics. Radar stations layered like onion skins, missile sites overlapping in brutal symmetry. From the Barents Sea to the Urals, every kilometer of sky had an owner. Nothing slipped through. Malenkov continued anyway. Detection ranges, engagement envelopes, intercept geometry. He spoke because it was required, not because they needed convincing. Then Lieutenant Sergei Petrov, the youngest man in the room, raised his hand. A mistake. Yes? Malenkov said. Petrov swallowed. Has the aircraft ever violated our airspace? The pause was brief. Too brief. There have been peripheral approaches, Malenkov said carefully. International airspace only. A grin spread across Voronin's face. So it runs, he said. Fast, but afraid. Laughter again, sharper this time. The Americans, another pilot said, build miracles and then use them like cowards. This belief ran deep. The Soviet Union had not survived the Great Patriotic War by running. It survived by standing still while the world burned around it. Fear was for civilians. The sky belonged to soldiers. The briefing ended. Chairs scraped back. Flight helmets were lifted, straps checked, jokes exchanged. Someone promised to buy vodka for whoever got the first lock if the Blackbird ever dared to cross the line. In the operations room below, radar operators took their seats. Green scopes glowed softly in the dim light. Coffee steamed. A card game started at the back table. Routine. Outside, the sun barely cleared the horizon, pale, weak, irrelevant. The Arctic wind howled like it always had, indifferent to men and machines alike. Everything was normal, everything was controlled, and somewhere far beyond the curve of the Earth, an aircraft designed without guns, without missiles, without mercy, crossed a point in the sky that had never been crossed before. The room explodes into motion. Metal chairs shriek across concrete. Someone knocks over a glass. Tea floods the floor, steaming as boots splash through it. A flight helmet slips from nervous fingers and cracks against the wall. No one stops. Pilots run, zippers half closed, oxygen hoses slapped into place by muscle memory older than fear. The foxbats are already waking, ground crews diving clear as engines inhale air like starving beasts. 30 seconds. That's all it takes. The first MiG-25 tears down the runway, afterburners igniting with a violence that turns dusk into fire. The blast wave slams into the control tower hard enough to rattle instruments. A second interceptor follows, then a third, their exhaust plumes painting the Arctic twilight molten orange. In the nearby fishing settlement, dogs howl. Windows tremble. Somewhere, a child wakes crying. In the underground command bunker, Major Anatoly Sidorov stares at his radar display and feels something he hasn't felt since cadet school. Unease. The contact is still there. Still straight, still fast, still utterly unconcerned. The American aircraft does not maneuver, does not probe, does not test. It simply crosses Soviet airspace as if it were empty. Sidorov lifts the handset. All S-200 batteries, he says. His voice sounds distant, even to himself. Authority granted. Engage on acquisition. 40 kilometers inland, a missile wakes. The launch is biblical. White fire, thunder, a column of smoke punching upward through the cold air. The guidance radar locks immediately. Computers hum. Mathematics align. This is what Soviet doctrine was built for. On Sidorov's screen, the symbols converge. Predator closing on prey. Steel answering arrogance. Then, they separate. The missile overshoots, arcing uselessly into thin sky. Its motor burns out. The warhead never detonates. Gravity takes over, dragging the weapon back toward Earth like an insult rejected by the heavens. The American track does not flicker. It does not acknowledge the attempt. A second missile launches, then a third. Each follows the same perfect, futile geometry. Ignition, climb, failure. Not because of error, because the target is leaving them behind. High above, the Foxbat pilots fight physics itself. At interception altitude, the air is thin as breath. Engines howl at the edge of destruction. Warning lights glow amber, then red. The aircraft skins begin to heat, metal expanding, tolerances screaming. Captain Alexei Voronin pushes anyway. Through the canopy, he sees it. A black needle against a sky already turning dark. Stars visible though the sun still lingers below the horizon. Two contrails stretch behind it, ruler straight, glowing amber where the stratosphere catches the last light of day. It is beautiful and unreachable. Voronin locks on. The tone screams in his headset. He fires. The missile drops cleanly, ignites, surges upward, and immediately begins to fall behind. The distance grows, effortlessly, like a hawk chasing a bullet. Voronin's instruments scream Mach 283, absolute limit. Beyond this, the Foxbat will begin to tear itself apart. His radar tells the truth his eyes already know. Mach 3.2, Mach 3.3. The gap widens. Over the radio, his voice is calm, almost flat. It's still accelerating. The Blackbird does not turn, it does not dive, it does not climb. It simply leaves. 47 minutes later, the doors close in Moscow. The emergency council chamber smells of old smoke and fresh fear. The long mahogany table, scarred by decades of planning wars meant never to be fought, now feels smaller. Defense Minister Dmitry Ustinov grips its edge. "Explain," he says. No one moves. Finally, the chief radar engineer steps forward, hands trembling despite himself. "Comrade Minister, the data is consistent, multiple independent confirmations. The theories come first. They always do. A hypersonic ramjet prototype. A resurrected German design stolen from Peenemünde. Some kind of atmospheric mirage. Anomalous refraction at extreme altitude. One engineer, pale with exhaustion, even whispers something about upper stratospheric density fluctuations before his section. Chief cuts him off with a look sharp enough to end careers. Each explanation is dissected. Each is measured against the data. each one dies. The numbers are merciless. 17 missiles launched, 17 perfect launches, 17 perfect failures, not because Soviet crews made mistakes, not because radars malfunctioned, not because guidance systems glitched. Everything worked. The problem was simpler and far worse. The intercept never existed. The target was always higher, always faster, always gone before the equation could balance. Defense Minister Ustinov finally voices the question no one wants to hear. How long? The intelligence chief opens a folder already worn thin at the edges. At least 47 confirmed penetrations since 1968, he says quietly. Likely more. The pattern suggests routine operations. The room goes still. And we never stopped one? No, Comrade Minister. The words fall like soil onto a coffin. The Soviet Union spans 11 time zones, fields millions of soldiers, possesses enough nuclear firepower to sterilize the planet. And for nearly a decade, an American aircraft has been visiting at will. Someone opens a window. January air pours in, sharp and bitter. It doesn't help. Then the photographs arrive. Fresh, still warm from the printer. They spread across the table. Submarine pens at Severodvinsk, missile silos in the Urals, bomber revetments, radar arrays. Every bolt, every shadow, captured from 17 miles above the Earth with obscene clarity. In the corner of each image, timestamp, coordinates, altitude. The timestamps hurt the most. These photographs were taken 90 seconds ago. By the time the folder closes, the aircraft responsible is already back in California. Engines ticking softly as they cool on the ramp at Beale Air Force Base. The profile is assembled at last. Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird. The name sounds childish. The specifications do not. 107 feet long, empty weight over 60,000 pounds, sustained speed above Mach 3, faster when threatened, operational ceiling exceeding 85,000 feet. At that altitude, blood boils without pressure. So the pilots wear full pressure suits, astronauts masquerading as airmen. The cockpit windows are not glass, but fused quartz, inches thick. Anything else would fracture under thermal stress. Each camera weighs more than a family car. But the line that makes Soviet metallurgists go silent is this: 85% titanium. Not steel, not aluminum, titanium. A metal that chews through drill bits, that ignites when mishandled. That demands inert gas chambers just to weld. A metal so difficult to work with that the entire Soviet production chain could barely support a fraction of one airframe. And the Americans built 32. They had no alternative. At Mach 3, aluminum melts. Steel weakens. Conventional aircraft soften like wax. The Blackbird cruises at temperatures exceeding 600 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot enough that ground crews wait half an hour after landing before approaching. Touch it too soon and skin comes off. Titanium endures. The aircraft itself is an act of defiance. It leaks fuel on the ground, by design. The panels are gapped intentionally, sealing only once heat expands the structure in flight. It taxis incomplete. It becomes whole only at speed. At altitude, pilots watch the horizon curve. The sky fades from blue to indigo to black. Stars appear at noon. Weather systems spin beneath them like diagrams in a textbook. They see it every time. That is the cruelty of it. The Blackbird does not creep through the margins of detection. It does not flirt with radar shadows or hug terrain. Concealment is the language of machines that fear being caught. This one does not hide. Long before ground stations paint a return, Soviet early warning satellites pick it up from orbit. A blooming infrared signature streaking across the upper atmosphere. A heat source so intense, it registers like a small celestial body. At cruise, the aircraft's skin temperature pushes beyond 600 degrees Fahrenheit. The titanium structure stretches as it heats, growing nearly a foot in length. The same panel seams that weep fuel on the runway clamp shut mid-flight as metal expands under friction. Inside the cockpit, the heat is inescapable. The quartz windows, 2 inches thick, engineered miracles, grow hot enough that touching them bare-handed would blister skin instantly. Even through pressure gloves, pilots feel the warmth seeping inward. The environmental system fights a losing war. Supercooled air floods the cockpit and arrives merely tolerable. Instruments absorb heat until their casings are warm to the touch. Kneeboard checklists soften, plastic covers going pliable like wax left too close to flame. This is not flight. It is controlled incineration at Mach 3. At night, the aircraft announces itself visually. Wing edges glow faintly red, not metaphorically, but visibly. Observers on the ground watch a pulsing ember cross the stars, twin contrails catching sunlight long after dusk has claimed the lower sky. Infrared tracking stations acquire it from 200 miles away. A miniature sun crawls across their scopes. And here lies the unbearable irony. That immense thermal signature, the thing that should make the Blackbird vulnerable, is exactly what makes it invincible. Soviet air defenses are built around two truths. Radar can see shape, and infrared can chase heat. Afterburners, exhaust plumes, friction-heated skins, missiles feast on such signatures. The Blackbird gives them everything. A target hotter than a blast furnace, a beacon screaming across every sensor band. So they fire. Radar-guided SA-5s, infrared-seeking SA-2s. Later, the SA-10, phased arrays, smarter seekers, missiles that sprint toward Mach 6. The launches are flawless. Motors ignite, guidance locks. Intercept solutions calculate cleanly. On paper, the math favors the missile. Higher acceleration, favorable geometry, optimal altitude. Time to intercept, 47 seconds. But by then the Blackbird is no longer where the missile believes it to be. At Mach 3.2, the aircraft eats distance, 1 mile every 1.8 seconds. While guidance systems process sensor input, refine vectors, and issue corrections, the target has already shifted miles ahead. The missile chases history. It detonates where the aircraft was, not where it is. A bloom of shrapnel expands into near vacuum, lighting nothing but ice crystals and thin sky. The Blackbird never turns. It never jinks. It never acknowledges pursuit. Evasion implies danger. This aircraft simply operates in a regime where interception becomes a cruel joke played by physics itself, visible to all, reachable by none. Soviet operators watch the cycle repeat with ritual precision: detect, track, launch, miss. The realization sinks in slowly, then all at once. Seeing something and stopping it are not the same universe, and the Soviet Union does not accept such distinctions easily. When doctrine fails, you do not adapt gently. You overwhelm. More engineers, more steel, more missiles, more fire. So they keep firing. Between the late 1960s and the end of the Cold War, over 1,000 surface-to-air missiles are launched at Blackbirds. Not warnings, not test shots, live warheads, fully fueled, fired by crews trained their entire lives for this moment. Missiles are creatures of urgency. They burn hot, they burn fast, and then they are empty. 45 seconds of fury, maybe a minute for the largest Soviet interceptors. After that, nothing remains but inertia and hope. The motor dies, thrust collapses, and the missile becomes a ballistic object, coasting upward, surrendering energy to drag molecule by molecule. The SA-5 reaches 80,000 feet in just under 30 seconds. In that same window, a Blackbird cruising at Mach 3.2 has already traveled more than 30 miles. The guidance computer does what it was designed to do. It projects the future, draws a lead solution, aims not at where the target is, but where it should be. But the future keeps moving. By the time the missile arrives at its calculated intercept point, the aircraft has already passed through it, exited the envelope, and continued on without comment. The geometry does not fail. It completes. And in doing so, it reveals the truth. Trying to intercept the Blackbird is like throwing a spear at lightning. The effort is real. The technique is sound. The outcome was decided before the throw. Proximity fuses blossom in empty sky. Fragmentation cones tear through stratospheric silence. Recovery teams later collect debris scattered across frozen tundra. Warheads intact, guidance systems pristine, telemetry confirming flawless performance. Every component worked. Except the universe. Air-to-air engagements fare no better. MiG-25 pilots push their machines into the red. Temperatures screaming, metal expanding, control margins evaporating. Occasionally, alignment occurs. A perfect intercept window. Radar lock steady. The tone continuous. They fire. The missile surges toward its prey, and the prey simply leaves. No flares, no jamming, no maneuvering, just throttle. The J-58 engines drink fuel by the ton, converting it directly into distance. Hundreds of meters become kilometers. Kilometers become absence. The missile chases contrails, burns out, tumbles helplessly away. The pilot turns home. Another report is filed. It joins a stack that grows heavier every year. The ledger tells the story without commentary. Dozens of intercept attempts, hundreds of missiles, 0 losses. The Blackbirds do not wander into Soviet airspace by mistake. They arrive on schedule. Intelligence officers know the launch times: Beale, Kadena, Mildenhall. They track tanker rendezvous points, calculate ingress routes, anticipate headings. 3rd Tuesday, Northern Vector, Aero 600 local. The predictability is deliberate. It says, even when you know, you cannot act. Every overflight becomes ritual humiliation. Radar operators announce the contact. Missile crews spin up. Interceptors scramble. Doctrine unfolds perfectly, textbook, flawless, obedient. And then the Blackbird passes through the engagement zone as if it were painted on glass. Cameras click. Sensors record. Entire military districts are photographed in minutes. Submarine pens, missile fields, troop formations, captured in clarity so sharp that analysts can distinguish vehicles, equipment, even individual faces. The damage is not tactical. It is psychological. Failure once is chance. Twice is error. Repeated endlessly, it becomes identity. Air defense commanders begin to dread the sound of the alert, not because it signals danger, but because it signals impotence. The Blackbird leaves contrails, not smoke. Signatures, not shadows. 17 miles above the Earth, it writes a message no missile can erase. Speed is sovereignty. Altitude is freedom. And control belongs to whoever arrives first and leaves last. The Cold War would end without a shot fired between these machines. But for years before that quiet conclusion, one truth burned into Soviet consciousness brighter than any warhead. They did not lose the sky in battle. They lost it to mathematics, and mathematics never negotiates.